Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the August 15th, 2019 meeting of the Johnson County Community College Board of Trustees meeting to order. Would you, and welcome to all of you, would you please stand and join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item is the roll call and recognition of visitors. Ms. Schleist.
This evening's visitors include Laura Smith Everett, Kevin Wimpy, Lori Bell, Michael Tracy, Matt Courtney, Dick Carter, and Roberta Eveslage.
Thank you, and thanks for being here. Welcome. Awards and recognition, Dr. Sopcich.
Thank you, Dr. Cook. I'd like to turn this over to Dr. McLeod.
I'd like to take a moment to recognize Professor Andrew Lutz. If you'll come up, we'll talk a little bit. Andrew came to us a couple of years ago, having been an adjunct at several places and having worked some time in industry, and what he brought to the table was a really interesting approach to how we work in our classrooms and how we think about what our newer programs need to be. During that time, his chair at the time, Maznackham, who had worked on a grant for us to get a designation that not many schools have achieved. As we worked through from Mazen to Chair Tom Renfro and then through to Andrew, they managed together to kind of pull that grant together and work us into a position where we have become a national center of academic excellence for cyber defense, allowing us to be a two-year school with a designation that puts us on par with universities who have cyber opportunity programs. And it allows us to really build a pipeline for students to move forward into cybersecurity as a way for us to train newer cyber defense professionals. Andrew has been a great leader for this group. He has worked diligently, a lot of extra hours, spent a lot of time working with external folks, pulling through our mentor from the Mentor Links grants from other institutions for us to make sure that our curriculum is aligned and that we have done the really hard lift of getting, in just a couple of years, a completely new program built, sanctioned, given a national accreditation, and now we're on our way to making some formal connections with KU and some schools that are in the cyber defense realm. A lot of that is due to this young man's work, and I think we really need to give him not only a round of applause, but a huge thank you for all of the extra hours that he spent trying to make sure that we were top notch.
Thank you. That was very, very kind. I appreciate it. Just wanted to say a couple of things. First off, I'm very honored to be here. Extremely honored to be here. Honored to accept this on behalf of my team, and our team couldn't have done it without any of them. We all played a role for certain. One thing I really wanted to touch on here is that this is an institutional designation, not just our departmental designation. There were many departments in this institution that assisted in achieving this designation, and without any of them, we could not have done it. So I did want to take a brief moment and mention some of the critical players there. Health information systems, paralegal, personal computer applications, nursing, medical information and revenue management, information services, and our registrar's office, and others. But to all the players in those departments, faculty, staff, otherwise, I'd like to offer my personal thank you. I'm not exaggerating when I say if any one of them would have not followed through, this would not have happened. So there's credit to be brought all around for that. Aside from that, I'd also like to thank administration, Dr. McLeod, and other administrators. Without their support, this also would not have been possible. So it was truly a team effort, and I'm happy to accept this on behalf of that team. Thank you very much.
On behalf of the board, the trustees, thank you for everything you do. I really appreciate your commitment to and collaboration with all the departments, but it takes strong leadership, and that's you. And so thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it. Any others? That's it. Next item is the open forum. The open forum section of the board agenda is a time for members of the community to provide comments to the board. There will be one open forum period during each regularly scheduled board meeting. Comments are limited to 5 minutes unless a significant number of people plan to speak. In that instance, the chair may limit a person's comments to less than 5 minutes. In order to be recognized, individuals must register at the door at each board meeting prior to the open forum agenda item. When addressing the board, registered speakers are asked to remain at the podium and should be respectful and civil and are encouraged to address individual personnel or student matters directly with the appropriate college department. As a practice, the college does not respond in this setting when the matter concerns personnel or student issues or matters that are being addressed through our established grievance or suggestion processes or are otherwise the subject of review by the college or board. We have one registered speaker this evening. Beth Edmonds, if you would come to the podium and name and address. Appreciate you being here tonight.
Good evening. My name is Beth Edmonds. I am a professor and chair of the Johnson County Community College Mathematics Department and the current president of the JCCC Faculty Senate. I have timed my remarks to 5 minutes, so I will read quickly and get it done. To quote the Higher Learning Commission's upcoming 2020 release of its criteria for accreditation, shared governance at the institution engages its internal constituencies, including its governing board, administration, faculty, staff, and students through planning, policy, and procedures. Since its inception, the JCCC Faculty Senate has been dedicated to promoting the principles of shared governance. If you read our Constitution written 8 years ago, you will find a rich document which includes the following statement. The Senate maintains that high-quality education and student success depend on faculty engagement beyond basic teaching duties, and those goals depend on faculty members being involved in decisions that impact the instruction. The Higher Learning Commission, or HLC, has expressed that it expects JCCC to make improvements in 2 areas, governance structure and communication. We are tasked with submitting a report by May 1, 2020, which will outline, and I quote, faculty voice within the shared governance system at JCCC. At the same time, the HLC, with some insight, provides a natural pathway to resolve these issues in which the JCCC Faculty Association and the Faculty Senate, and I quote again, coexist as long as their respective areas of responsibility and authority are clear. I would like to share 2 examples which demonstrate that the structure of the Faculty Senate is unique in that it enables it to bring to light issues affecting students and faculty from all areas that might otherwise be overlooked. My first example is the most recent push to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, also known as DEI, again at JCCC. At the September 2018 Faculty Senate meeting, a task force was created to address diversity issues at JCCC. Coincidentally, this was also one area of concern mentioned by the HLC. Last May, the task force, an energetic and caring group of concerned faculty, staff, and students, met with college executives. As a result of these meetings, it was decided that JCCC would commence a DEI assessment to determine needs and actions for addressing DEI on campus. This task force, created through the Faculty Senate, has taken on a life of its own, and while their work is still in the early stages, this is something the entire JCCC community should be proud of. My second example is the action taken in May 2019, in which the Faculty Senate approved a faculty-created model for shared governance to be used as the template or a starting point for future implementation, correcting the CAO's model, which omitted the Faculty Senate. It remains our position that the Faculty Senate should be the body overseeing all faculty-based non-contractual campus committees and the first point of contact for the JCCC administration to seek faculty input for non-contract issues. Our model will provide the JCCC academic branch with a starting point for meaningful discussion about shared faculty governance. The JCCC administration has a unique opportunity here because the proposed template starting point model has the added benefit of incorporating an excellent and very natural means of facilitating and evaluating effective communication, which allows me to briefly segue into the topic of communication at JCCC. As a result of the HLC's insistence that communication must improve, JCCC has endeavored to make notable changes. but it is significant that in the past year, we have backslid a little bit within the community. Basic information has at times become more difficult to obtain. Two examples of this are the credit course listings, which no longer give information about courses, and our general announcements of daily campus activities, which now require a login in order to actually see the announcements. In the coming academic year, the Faculty Senate will urge the JCCC administration to seek open dialogue with faculty, to work from our template model, and turn this unique opportunity into the reality of shared faculty governance and more than just name only. This dialogue will allow us to stay focused on the pathway toward a resolution for the HLC's two concerns of shared governance and communication. In fact, since the Faculty Senate is mentioned multiple times throughout the accreditation documentation, I take this as a strong indicator that the HLC has expectations of the integral role that the Faculty Senate should play in this process. We hope and intend to participate despite objections that are voiced in various arenas across campus. Before I conclude, I will add this. I asked to be included on the agenda for tonight's meeting. As president of the JCCC Faculty Senate, this seemed reasonable. I was refused. I will continue to request this privilege, but will utilize the public forum if refused in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. And does Dr. McLeod have a copy of that template?
I do.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. That concludes the open forum.
Dr. Cook, if I may, Mayor Kelly did arrive right after we got done with the pledge, and with your indulgence, I think he would like to present to the board.
I did have a call from Trustee Snyder that you would be here to make a presentation in the open forum regarding the seminar upcoming, and I think that if it's okay with the board, we will allow that presentation to be made. Please, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and to the entire board, I apologize for my tardiness. Had a little bit of traffic on the way from the plaza. As you can imagine, it's the summertime, so there's a couple of things to run into. No real good way to get down here, but regardless, thank you very much for the indulgence, and thank you very much for the invitation, Board Member Snyder, or Trustee Snyder. My name is Mike Kelly. I'm the mayor of the city of Roland Park. I'm also the co-chairman of the Metropolitan Kansas City Climate Action Coalition. It's a group of elected officials as well as local leaders that are focused on drawing down greenhouse gases while also implementing the co-benefits that comes with that, including improvements to public health, improvements to economic vitality, improvements to job training opportunities, of which Johnson County Community College has been an absolute leader for our region. And congratulations to you, to Dr. Antle, and to this entire board for the good work that's already been done. I appreciate President Sopcich inviting me to meet with him when we started the coalition. We had a very pleasant conversation, and we talked about ways that we might support each other's efforts. One of those was the upcoming Climate Action Summit, which is going to be hosted here on September 14th. And we are very excited to host the event here. The event is an opportunity for not only elected officials, but also leaders from throughout the metropolitan area to come together to celebrate the successes that have been achieved in our region. And the college is a great representation of those successes, but also to discuss emerging trends and to bring some national voices together to talk about how Kansas City can remain a leader in the climate resilience movement for the United States. The event is sold out for our registrations, and we are excited to bring together leaders. Over 40 speakers are confirmed for the day. Some of the highlights include our congressional representatives from the Kansas City metropolitan area, but also some interesting perspectives on a changing environment and mitigation and adaptation that brings, including the Lieutenant Governor Lynn Rogers, as well as a Brigadier General, Dr. Christopher King, to talk about the national defense perspective on climate change. We'll also have breakout sessions from such things as agriculture and the environment to the transportation case. We'll have the architect of the new airport, as well as Secretary Lorenz, the Kansas Secretary of Transportation, but also one that I'm particularly interested in is Mayor Brainerd from Carmel, Indiana, who's a four-term Republican mayor. He's going to have a moderated conversation with the new mayor of Kansas City, Missouri, Mayor Lucas, and it'll be a really interesting dynamic from a difference in experience, difference in parties, but both committed to making their communities climate resilient and investing in the future opportunities that are available for our community to be the leaders in renewable energy and energy efficiency. Kansas City's quite a design exporter for the world, and to be at the forefront of that gives us some real opportunity. So I appreciate your indulgence. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have, but we very much appreciate your partnership, and we appreciate that you recognize the importance that this has for our residents, and training them to be future leaders in these endeavors is not only good for our community and for our public health, but really good for our economy too.
Mayor, when you say you're sold out, how many people are you expecting?
We are expecting 500 for the day, but thanks to the generosity of the foundation and bringing in Paul Hawken, who's a worldwide leader. He's spoken with kings and queens, as well as given the commencement speeches just about every Ivy League university in the nation. The foundation's been kind enough to help us bring him in. So the afternoon's going to be open to the general public. So from 2:30 to 5:30, you'll have an opportunity to hear not only from Paul Hawken, but also from Congresswoman Davids, from Mayor Lucas and Mayor Brainerd, as well as some of the leaders of the Metro KC Climate Action Coalition.
Thanks, Mayor. Appreciate it. And thanks for your leadership in the project. We'll look forward to it.
Well, thank you for the leadership of the sustainability initiative here, from Dr. Ansel to this board. We appreciate everything that you do.
So after this, after that Saturday, what are you going to do next?
Well, we've actually been selected by a group called the Global Covenant of Mayors. It's a group that includes about 10% of the world's population's leaders have come together to put together an opportunity to do climate action planning for various cities. Kansas City has applied as a region, so we will be the first region in the United States to receive that technical assistance to do an emissions inventory, but also to come up with a plan. And that plan includes investments in renewable energies, but also opportunities to invest in things such as innovation or new technologies. So that entrepreneurship and startup initiative. So we'll be working with that international partner and creating the model that can be taken to other regions that share statewide borders, that share multiple county areas where really they rely upon each other and they work together, and it makes sense to do things at a regional level. And what a week for regionalism we have here in the metropolitan area with an end to the border war. Who would have thought stopping playing basketball would lead to such great opportunities for our city? But that's the next big plan, and so we'll be excited to launch that climate action plan. We hope it'll be very dynamic and successful for our community. We look forward to working with the college moving forward.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much to the board.
Next item, our board reports, college lobbyist report. Mr. Carter.
Good evening. You've got my report, and so I won't go through it in detail, but I'll raise three issues that I just want to call your attention to. The first is the interim committees have been appointed, and we're not on the agenda for the next couple of months, but we anticipate that in October is when the Legislative Budget Committee will take up the issue of college budgets and some of the detailed information that is included in my report, just about exactly what the mission of the community colleges are, and we'll be putting that into the report. So we're looking forward to October for when that particular meeting rolls around. The regents recently met in retreat, as they do every year around this time, and part of their discussion entailed a system-wide request for higher education. And while they didn't put numbers to that request during their retreat, we had a call today with the folks that represent the various educational institutions, and some numbers are beginning to at least be formed. And that total number for the system looks like it's approximately, and again, this has not been presented to the board yet, so it will require board approval, and then that will be part of the Regent's system-wide request that goes to the governor's budget office. Right now, those numbers are looking like around 65 million or so in total for new dollars. The breakdown looks approximately like this: approximately 50 million for the state universities of the 4 years, 8.5 million for the 2-year sector, 4.5 million for the Excel and CTE program, and about 1.6 million for Washburn. That totals about 65 million or so. I didn't add it up specifically, but that's the breakdown that I was given over the phone. There's another interesting component that is being discussed, and we'll see how it continues to play out. It's not a new concept or a foreign one by any means, but we haven't really looked at it in Kansas in the past, although it's been briefly discussed, and that is the notion of around $10 million in state aid to be used for need-based scholarships. There would be a one-to-one match component for foundations. My question was, would a institution like JCCC be able to participate in that program? And the answer that I got at my level, the folks that talk on my level, was yes. So that puts us in a different ball field than maybe some of the other community colleges in the state of Kansas. So we'll see how that continues to play out. That certainly is something that will need to be played out in the budget and in the legislature. The other piece that the Regents talked about was a deferred maintenance bond for state institutions, and that would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $500 to $800 million bonded over a multi-year period, to be paid back in part, some with funds that the universities are already using for their infrastructure, as well as the Educational Building Fund, the EBIF. I can't remember what the I stands for, but it's part of the 1% or the 1 mil that the state collects over and above K-12 education on property tax goes for that Educational Building Improvement Fund. And then the final piece is a driver education instructor update. This is very fresh. There's no new news per se. However, the Board of Education had a very robust conversation about this issue. They had several action items on their agenda. Most of them sailed right through with little or no discussion. This one had a little bit more discussion and dissent from some of the board members. It did end up passing in the end 6-3. And so I think what begins now is once those new criteria come out from the Board of Education, it's going to be a conversation that probably takes place 2 places on this campus, in Dr. McLeod's operation and in Karen Martley's operation, because we have 2 components where we address driver education. I don't think we're finished with the issue. We still have some room where we're going to have to figure out how that impacts us. We continue to receive calls from educators wanting the instruction, wanting to take driver's education instruction so that they can be certified to take that back and teach at their school. Again, this movement from the Board of Education at the state level sets all of that in motion, and so it will be, I would think, spring at the earliest, and that is at the earliest, before any type of credit course could be offered, and we have the ability to act quicker than maybe some of the Regents institutions, but again, that's a conversation that we'll have to have moving forward. So, Mr. Chairman, I would stop there, and if there's questions, I'd be happy to attempt to answer those.
Any questions of Mr. Carter? Any questions? Thank you, Dick. I think you explained that well. Good luck, and finish summer camp and get ready for the next session, legislative session. Faculty Association, Dr. Harvey.
Thank you. So this has been our professional development days this week. It's been incredibly busy. We had an all faculty meeting this morning that was pretty intense and a bit chaotic, and it was a challenging meeting to be a part of. But then I just finished a faculty association meeting with a packed room of people where I witnessed some incredible collegiality and respect, mutual respect, and it was a very encouraging environment. I would say the general message and the theme that I got from my colleagues on the topic of shared governance is that we still very much feel like it's going to be possible for all of us to sort out, any details we need to amongst ourselves without a problem, but we still have the concerns of how we are included by the administration and the board and such in decision-making, in decision-making that impacts the faculty. So that is still our biggest concern about shared governance, but we had a very nice meeting this afternoon. I went to one of the engagement survey listening sessions. I was able to go to one, and I have to say that Karen Martley does an amazing job of leading those and really creates an atmosphere that makes people feel comfortable sharing their concerns and their experiences, and maybe explaining some of the whys of how they responded to the survey, which I think was the intent of it. I do have one concern that I did feel should be shared with you, and I want to keep it fairly generic, but there was an individual that apparently shared some things in the listening session, and then later was sort of confronted by their supervisor about some of the things that they had said, where other people were in the room and then told them what they said and that sort of thing. And so my concern is that this. We create this very safe feeling environment and ask people to be honest, and then it's not really a safe environment if everybody is going to be coming back at you and saying you can't say things like that in public. So I want you guys to be aware of that, because this process is supposed to be a legitimate, useful process. But if that happens to one person, I can only imagine that there's other people that don't feel comfortable, sharing things, and they don't know if I say this, even if they do it in a survey, is this going to be used against me in some way? And the faculty we have our due process rights, and we have a level of job security that's not necessarily experienced by all the employees of the institution. So I think while I don't know how you could run that meeting any differently based on the plan, okay, but I do think that the idea that you get honest, open feedback at the listening sessions, and that is going to be a safe environment for people to share things like that, I'm just not sure. So I feel like that needs to be considered. I did have the opportunity to attend and participate in the Wall of Honor ceremony. That was yesterday. There was 2 faculty that were put on the Wall of Honor. One was Steve Wilson, who was one of our math professors, and I'll be honest, one of the smartest people I've ever known. He has made huge contributions to the department, to the association, and helping us with leading research team efforts. And when he retired, we were like, oh, we don't know how we're going to replace him because he's brilliant. We managed to muddle through, but we do miss him. I also had the opportunity to honor Dr. Kevin Gratton, who was chemistry professor. He's chemistry professor emeritus, and I replaced him when he retired after 33 years. He was first at the college in 1973, and it was a special moment for his family. And I did want to share with all of you, for those of you that couldn't be there, a couple of things from, he wrote a book at the end of his time at Johnson County as a full-timer. He had the senior scholar kind of designation, and he got some release time to work on a project for the institution just before he retired. And his project was to write a history of the science division at the college from the beginning until the year that he retired. And so he has it's a wealth of information. And there were a couple of highlights that I shared and wanted to share with you from his book. He talked about his leadership of the course that I teach primarily, and he used to teach and lead. And a couple of the underlying principles that he used to guide decision-making were that the student is more important than the course. and also that all of us together know more than each of us alone. And I think those are really important principles, and I also often, I've said this before here, but I use that mantra of what's best for the students when I can't decide what to do with a specific situation in my classes, and that came from Kevin. So that was a real treat to get to be a part of and to honor sort of the legacy that he left for those of us in chemistry that have come up after him. We are hosting the Faculty Association is hosting a candidate forum, and we have invited all 6 candidates for the Board of Trustees election to this, and they've all accepted at this point. It is September 3rd in the Hudson Auditorium. We're co-hosting this with the League of Women Voters, and it'll be at 7 p.m., and it's going to be a very professional and academic experience. We really wanted to provide we wanted this to be an academic event where our students could come and learn, and we just wanted it to be open to for everyone as an educational thing. And our own professor of communication studies, Dr. Terry Easley Geraldo, is going to be conducting this forum, so she'll be the moderator. And there'll be a reception to follow. It's at 7 p.m. It'll be about 90 minutes. So that's those plans. I did want to mention a couple more things. One thing is that the faculty got a very strange thing in a lot of our mailboxes today. It was a postcard. It was inside an envelope with an address from a company in Lawrence. It doesn't say who it's from, but it was a very surprising thing that we have no idea where it came from. The Faculty Association had absolutely nothing to do with it. One of our faculty members, one of our officers called the company whose address is being used, and they have no knowledge of this. So it was very unusual and suspicious, and I just wanted to go on record as saying we have no idea where that came from. First of all, that wouldn't be our style. We would have, if we're going to do something, we're going to say it directly, out loud. We're going to own it. We're going to put our name on it. It would be more professional. And to me, it's a bit mean-spirited under the current circumstances. And I just want to say that I don't know where it came from, but it was kind of a surprise to us. So I think if you know what it is, then you know what I'm talking about, and it wasn't us. The other thing is we have a party tomorrow night, and of course, you're all invited to come. It's the usual place at the usual time, and we're going to have Kansas City Joe's barbecue. And so if you don't know where the usual place and the usual time is, just let me know. And I'll share that with you. I guess that concludes my report. Any
Dr.
questions?
Harvey, I have 2 comments. Number
Yes.
1, I'm aware of the communication that you referenced. I appreciate you being forthright about that, and we'll look into that, but thank you very much for that acknowledgement. Secondly, I just wanted to say that when you mentioned you had a very collegial meeting this afternoon, I had the opportunity to attend the the forum yesterday morning, and hearing and seeing the response following that, I thought everybody that participated in that did a terrific job. The students did a terrific job, but it was the buzz after in the lobby and the enthusiasm. And it helps remind us that we're here for students, and we have an outstanding faculty that make sure those students are successful. So thank you very much for your comments. Nancy?
I wanted to ask a question. When we did the Wall of Honor yesterday, and you were talking about the program that the gentleman did, Mr. Wilson, who wrote the book?
No, it was Kevin
the-
Grattan.
Kevin,
and
I'm
okay,
sorry.
no,
So
that's fine.
what is that? You said not many people take advantage of it. Just quickly.
Oh, okay. So there's this section in our master agreement. It was actually negotiated, and it's called Senior Scholar.
Okay.
And we just haven't had a lot of takers on it. And I think part of that, to be honest, has to do with capers. And a lot of times when you're close to the end of your career, you want to get as many hours and as much pay as you can for the capers calculations. I mean, that's just natural. But it is there, and right now as it's written, it's an opportunity for someone to have some reassigned time to work on a project that will benefit the institution. And it's supposed to be, it needs to be taken in, I believe, the 2 years before you retire. So that's the way it's written. And so we just haven't had a lot of takers, but that's always been there. So if someone knows they're going to retire in 2 years, they could say, I have this project that I want to do to leave behind for the school that will help the institution, and they can get release from their teaching for part of it. And I think we do we have one this year? Yeah, we do have one person this year that is taking advantage of that. But it is it's budgeted every time, but it's one of the least used benefits, I think, in some ways. But I think there's some reasons why.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Melanie. Appreciate it very much. Have a good year. Interesting shirt you have on. Where'd you get it?
Well, I actually got this when we dedicated the Fine Arts Building.
Yeah. Johnson County Research Triangle, Trustee Cross.
Yes, Mr. Chair, our committee met in April. We'll meet again October 28th, and I have nothing to report.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. KACCT, Trustee Lawson.
The next meeting is September 13th through the 14th at Neosho Community College, and then the National ACCT will meet in San Francisco, October 15th and 19th.
Okay. Thank you. Foundation, Trustee Musil.
Foundation has a lot of activities going on between now and November 9th. The first one is a Foundation member social at the Hugh Libby Career Technical Education Center on Thursday, August 22nd. Richard Fort, the dean, will be providing tours of the facility after an opportunity for socializing and some welcoming remarks. So a great opportunity for the community to come in and see what we've built. The Foundation's annual scholarship celebration luncheon will be held on September 4th at 12 o'clock noon in the Rainier Center, where we have the opportunity to pass the mic and hear from students who receive scholarship monies. And it's my second favorite event on campus after the GED graduation. But if you can attend as a trustee, it's a great evidence of what the community does in the scholarship fundraising and how much it means to our students. Foundation reported nearly 1,500 students received over $1.2 million in Foundation private scholarships. And so we always want to publicly thank the generous donors in the community who provide that assistance, and the people in financial aid who work every day to see that it's distributed as broadly as possible. And then finally, the preparations continue for Some Enchanted Evening Gala, our largest scholarship fundraiser, which will be Saturday, November 9th at the Overland Park Convention Center. Mike and Susan Lally are the chair couple for this year's event. Frank Devasel is being honored as the Johnson County of the Year after his really building Olathe Health Systems, Olathe Medical Center almost from scratch and turning that into an amazing healthcare facility for the region. About $600,000 has been raised to date. Sponsorships and ticket sales are on sale, and for the first time, the Foundation will be announcing special pricing options for faculty and staff soon, so that there can be more participation. The convention center allows us to expand the number of people that could comfortably be in the facility. So we hope we can get more people from the college into that event to help raise money for scholarships. And that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any questions of Trustee Musil? Next item is the budget public hearing. It is time for our 2019-20 hearing. I will open that hearing up at this time. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to the board regarding our 2019-2020 budget? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to our board regarding the 2019-2020 budget? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to the budget on our 2019-2020 budget? Do any trustees have a question for either Rachel or Barbara? Any questions from trustees? We will vote on the adoption of the budget during the management section of our committee reports and recommendations. Are there any other questions or comments? If not, I will close the budget hearing and move on. Committee reports and recommendations. Management, Trustee Ingram.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Management Committee met at 8 a.m. on Wednesday, August 7th, here in the boardroom. The information related to the management meeting begins on page 1 and runs through page 27 of the board packet. The Management Committee received several presentations. Barbara LARSON, Executive Vice President for Finance and Administrative Services, presented information on agreements with a number of outside agencies. These agreements can be found in the consent agenda on pages 59 and 62 of the board packet. Rachel Lears, Associate Vice President, Financial Services, Chief Financial Officer, reviewed the semi-annual report of budget reallocations. This report can be found in the board packet on pages 15 through 18. Jerry Zimmerman, the college's benefits manager, presented an update on the Voluntary Employment Retirement Benefit, or VERB program. The college originally budgeted $5.8 million as a liability for this new benefit for the current fiscal year. Based on an updated assessment of eligible participants, we will now book $6.3 million for the program in fiscal year 2019-20. This is the amount of the full liability, but actual costs will be considerably less and will be based on the number of individuals who choose to retire under the VERB program in the current year. Barbara Larson gave a brief overview of procurement services, bid processes, and procedures in light of the discussion of last month's board meeting regarding a particular award. I'd like to ask Barbara to review this with the full board, if you would do so at this time, Barbara.
Yes, thank you, Trustee Ingram. I wanted to follow up on the discussion from last month's board meeting regarding a particular purchase. This was the contract renewal for digital fine paper. That renewal was awarded to Veritiv Corporation. The second highest bid for that was Midland Paper. And for those listening to that discussion, they may have been left with the impression that Midland Paper is based here in Johnson County. It's not. They do have an office in Johnson County. They're a privately held corporation that's actually based in Illinois, in Wheeling, Illinois. Veritiv Corporation also has a warehouse in Johnson County. Also based on last month's board meeting, I asked procurement staff to follow up on whether we could find peer institutions or other regional institutions that had a social justice metric as part of their award criteria. And so far, we have not been able to identify any. Not that they don't exist, but we have not been able to identify any. When we look at the Human Rights Campaign Corporate Equity Index, Veritiv was listed in the footnotes as having the low score because they did not respond to the Human Rights Campaign request to respond. So I'm reluctant to make a judgment on their human rights record based on the fact that they didn't complete the survey. Certainly, if we were going to use that as a criteria, and again, I have a lot of respect for the Human Rights Campaign. However, that corporate index is largely based on fairly large corporations, on Fortune 500 corporations and other large corporations. We write over 3,000 purchase orders a year, many of which are not to Fortune 500 corporations. And finally, I'll say at this month's management committee, based on this discussion, Trustee Snyder asked that we do further research into procurement practices as they relate to local vendor preferences. We do have a statement in our current competitive solicitation policy which states that preference may be given when quality and price are comparable to purchases offered for sale by vendors with offices or plants located in Johnson County, Kansas. And I certainly appreciate that this could be strengthened based on some objective criteria. So we would be looking at that and bringing something forward through the management committee in the future. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question. Did you reach out to the Human Rights Campaign?
I did not, specifically.
And so this company, Verta, did they self-reported this to you?
No, it's based on the footnotes in the document. It says they did not respond to the survey. Thank
So
you.
you're not sure if the Human Rights Campaign index is based only on survey? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying based on the footnotes, they did not respond to the survey. So.
I'm not talking to
Proceed.
Okay. Janelle Vogler, Associate Vice President for Business Services, presented the single source purchase report and the summary of awarded bids between $50,000 and $150,000. This summary can be found on page 19. I provided an overview of the process that the board will use to select the executive recruiting and search firm for the presidential search. We will have more specific action regarding the search later in this report. Karen Martley, Vice President of Continuing Education and Organizational Development, gave a presentation on the Employee Engagement Survey from spring of 2019. She provided more detail on the favorability results filtered by employee class, age, and description. She also updated the committee on the listening sessions that have occurred over the summer. Rex Hayes, Associate Vice President, Campus Services and Facility Planning, gave an update on the Oral Health on Wheels, or OHOW, and Motorcycle Storage Garage project. He also provided the monthly progress report on capital infrastructure projects, and this report is on page 25 of the packet. Next, he gave an update on the construction projects across campus and reviewed the report on the financial status of the facilities master plan. That report is in your packet on page 27. The Management Committee has a number of recommendations to present this evening. Information for the first recommendation can be found on pages 2 through 6 of the board packet. The recommendation pertains to a refunding opportunity of the Series 2011 bonds. At our committee meeting earlier this month, Bill Henderson and Matt Courtney of Piper Jaffray were in attendance and presented information on a proposal authorizing the sale of student commons and parking system refunding revenue bonds. They estimate the college will save approximately $125,000 annually by refinancing the Series 2011 bonds for total net savings to the college of just under $1 million between now and fiscal year 2028. We have representatives from Piper Jaffray here this evening, as well as from Gilmore Bell, the college's bond counsel, if you would have questions for any of them.
Any questions of our consultants? Any questions regarding this topic? Trustee Lawson.
I know someone from the public asked me specifically to ask this question about this. Does this policy, what we're talking about right now with the bonds, does that conflict with the Kansas state statutes that we have around bonds?
Does it conflict with? What?
No. And this is a refinancing of bonds that we already held.
This is not new. We've done this in the past to save the college lots of dollars as the opportunity comes up to refinance. And so I really applaud the consultants for bringing it to our attention and staff. I mean, $125,000 a year is good savings. Any other questions? Proceed.
Okay, if there are no further questions, I'd like to proceed with the recommendation at this time. It is the recommendation of the Management Committee that the Board of Trustees accept the recommendation of the college administration to adopt a resolution authorizing the offering for sale of student commons and parking system refunding revenue bonds in the approximate principal amount of $8,500,000 as found on pages 4 through 6 in the board packet, and I will make that recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carried. One no? Okay. I guess that's, and David's not here, so 5-1 with one absent. Proceed.
Okay. Barbara Larson presented the 2019-2020 Management Committee Working Agenda found on pages 8 and 9 of your packet. There was an omission in the working agenda presented for action last month, and this month's packet contains a corrected version. So we ask for your approval of the working agenda.
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Oh, I haven't read the recommendation. I
okay.
apologize.
You said you, sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So we ask for your approval. It is the recommendation of the Management Committee that the Board of Trustees approve fiscal year 2019-2020 Management Committee Working Agenda, and I will make that motion.
Second. We have a motion and a second for the calendar. Any questions? All in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? We have a 6-1 vote.
Okay, the next recommendation was for a transfer of funds. The Center for Sustainability has requested that $6,000 from recycling proceeds be transferred to the JCCC Foundation. This disbursement brings the total distributed to the Foundation for Scholarships since 2012 to approximately $107,000. It is the recommendation of the Management Committee that the Board of Trustees authorize the transfer of $6,000 from the Sustainability Initiatives funds to the JCCC Foundation to be used for student scholarships, and I will make that motion.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I would say that I think Dr. Antel reported at the meeting yesterday that total now is about $300,000 that sustainability has.
If you go back to the beginning of recycling started.
It's 4?
Yeah, it's about a little over 300.
Yeah. Thanks, Jay.
Good job.
And thank you.
Yes.
Good job.
Earlier, we held the public hearing on fiscal year 2019-20 budget. This public hearing represents the culmination of the budget process that transpires over many months, beginning with budget guidelines that were first presented to the Board of Trustees in December of last year. These budget guidelines provided a policy framework for building the fiscal year 2019-20 budget, and they were considered and adopted by the board at the December 13, 2018 meeting. Furthermore, the board held a comprehensive budget workshop in April of this year and adopted the management budget in May. It is the recommendation of the Management Committee that the Board of Trustees accept the fiscal year 2019-20 budget as published, which includes total property tax levied of $101,704,900 for fiscal year 2020 as compared to $97,842,147 for fiscal year 2019, and does hereby certify said budget to the County Clerk of Johnson County, Kansas for collection in the manner prescribed by law, and I will make that motion.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Trustee Musil.
Well, we've been through this a lot. We started in December with our budget guidelines. In December, we projected an increase in appraised value that would yield $4 million in new dollars for the college. Johnson County's values grew more than that and would have yielded $5.6 million. The budget that is presented includes a 1.6% rollback in the mill levy, 1.6%, so that we still take $4 million in new dollars. Last year, we did the exact same thing. We rolled the mill levy back, so we took the $3 million we had budgeted instead of $4 million. I think there's a tradition here of funding this college as it needs to be funded, including a history of a majority of this board. We're on the board when we raised the mill levy 0.75 back in 2013. I won't try to beat this horse completely dead, but I look at the blue bar on the graph and see that since I've been on this board, property taxes as a percentage of revenue have gone from 55% to 66%. Every other source has been reduced. I've seen information out there suggesting that a rollback in the mill levy benefits businesses, specifically developers, when 2/3 of the property taxes paid for in Johnson County are paid for by residential folks. Single-family homeowners and apartments pay 2/3 of the property taxes in Johnson County. I undertook an exercise because there's this notion that property tax rollbacks are somehow beneficial, more beneficial to wealthy individuals or business owners. I bought a house in 1987 in Johnson County. It was $87,500. It's just west of the college, at College and Flum. In 2014, its appraised value was $170,000, and this year it has gone up to $225,800. Hardly Mission Hills or southern Johnson County. So its property value has increased 32% in the last 5 years, and its taxes to the college alone have increased $63 a year for fiscal year 2020. I'm very willing to accept new dollars for new programs and to continue the programs we have and to compensate our faculty and our staff reasonably, which I believe we do. But when the growth, I'm also willing to accept more money because I think we contribute to the growth of Johnson County. And I think I've said this every August since I've been on the board. At the same time, I think there has to be a recognition that folks out there are feeling property tax pressure, not just from Johnson County Community College, but when your appraised value goes up 32% in 5 years, and you add the county, and you add your city, and you add the water district, or you add the school district, it affects people, particularly those on lower incomes or on fixed incomes. It is a regressive tax, and I'm not willing to increase it over and above what we budgeted. So I hope the rest of the board will go along with that, because if we don't roll it back, and if you choose not to roll it back, then you're asking for an additional $1.6 million in property taxes to be charged. About $1 million of that would come from residential homeowners and apartment dwellers. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Trustee Cross.
I thank the board and I thank the chair for the opportunity to make the statement. You know, it's telling that there was nobody here at the budget hearing, and either that means nobody knows what's going on here or they're somewhat happy with us. So that is to say that in my time, 30 years ago, I think my father came back to school here. In my time connected to this college, many people are happy with this place, and so the entertaining nature of our internal politics and issues right now are entertaining, though somewhat concerning. I think that this board has largely welcomed discussion and input from every sector of this county. I personally witnessed in 6 years on the board, and yes, I was on this board when I think it was my first vote or my first night here. We raised that. We voted to raise and we had to come back. It was going to be 1 and became 0.75 later. So that was a courageous thing to do in what really was a conservative time in this state's history. And I'm real proud of that, and I thank the board members who were here for doing that. Saturday, we had a retreat in which we talked about the College Promise and a program that we have launched, and I think, like many other of our peer institutions, struggled to figure out how to implement. I do thank this board for even discussing it. I thank this board for considering it. I think, I don't exactly want it to be 13th and 14th grade that we're funding, but I think that the initiative as instituted by the administration was a welcome one and not an unthoughtful one. So with that said, I think if we'd had more money, my preference would have been to simply keep the money we had, to go towards student success, ensure more students could have success here. A friend and colleague said, what about the students who don't even know or can't even fill out FAFSAs? And that was almost not me. That was not me. We were from a lower income family, but we knew to do that, and that was a point of privilege, certainly. So the need to address need-based students, I believe Trustee Musel said that repeatedly Saturday. That's near and dear to my heart, and I appreciate his comments on that. I appreciate the recognition that it is indeed a regressive tax. I think any read of thoughtful discussion on taxes and the reason that President Lincoln first originated an income tax was frankly to get the money when people have it, rather than create a situation, say in Wyandotte County, where there's a high tax delinquency rate because of an impoverished citizenry. So we are certainly blessed here. I understand that the gentleman, Trustee Musel, you repeatedly state that we have higher revenues, and that should not go unnoticed. We'll have higher revenues this year because we're blessed to have an embarrassment of riches in real estate, frankly. Nevertheless, as I've said, my vote in disagreement with you and demonstrating our lack of groupthink, frankly, is that there is a looming recession coming, and I would rather not raise taxes in the middle of that recession. Nevertheless, I do have confidence in this board. Though reasonable minds may disagree, I simply would rather keep the mill, and reinvest it in our students and our faculty and our administration, frankly, who in difficult and challenging times have done some amazing things. So I thank the board for the discussion. I thank the board for listening to my thoughts. I know Trustee Cook is anxious for me to be quiet, so I will. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm just trying to figure out what I'm going to do next.
I'll put words in.
Any other comments or questions? We have a motion and a second to adopt the 2019-2020 budget as presented. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
I hear that as a 5-4 and 2 against. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Canvas learning, thank you. Canvas, Trustee Lindstrom.
I excused myself during the revenue bond vote. I would be in favor of that. I wasn't here for that vote, but I would vote yes for that. So
Go back and reflect that.
let the record reflect that.
Canvas learning management system, Trustee Ingram.
There were 3 recommendations based on requests for proposals or RFPs and bids that Ms. Vogler reported. First was the RFP for the renewal of an annual contract for a learning management system. It is the recommendation of the Management Committee that the Board of Trustees accept the recommendation of the college administration to approve the renewal of contract JCCC-1416 with Instructure for ongoing licensing of the learning management system for a current year amount of $181,466 and an estimated amount of $362,932 for the remaining optional renewals through 2022 for a total estimated amount of $544,398, and I will make that motion.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions? Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Our next recommendation is for the General Executive Search and Recruiting Services. To be clear, this recommendation does not pertain to identifying a firm for the JCCC presidential search, but for other executive positions at the college on an as-needed basis. It is the recommendation of the Management Committee that the Board of Trustees accept the recommendation of the college administration to approve the proposal for EFL Associates for as-needed executive search and recruiting services for an FY20 base year and 4 optional renewal years through 2024 for the supplemental rates, and I will make that motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Trustee Musil.
Question, is there a number of searches they will do? I mean, I know we have an idea of how many positions would be open on an annual basis, but is it, they'll help on however many we have and they're comfortable that?
Per incident, per time we use it. So,
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Wait a minute,
Sorry.
So it's $35,000 a search?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
based on the bids?
Yes.
Is that how high your retainers are?
What?
Trustee Cross.
I base mine on yours.
Does this lock us in on the presidential search? I'm
No.
not complaining, I'm just asking.
No,
Okay.
does not.
Do we require organizations to align with our non-discrimination policy?
Yes, as part of contractual language, yes.
Any other questions? Again, this is not related to the presidential search, and we'll deal with some of the other positions we have open as needed. We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
6-1. Motion carries. Vehicle storage.
Next is a recommendation for construction of the vehicle storage garage. It is the recommendation of the Management Committee that the Board of Trustees accept the recommendation of the college administration to approve the low bid from Infinity Group in the amount of $538,223 with an additional 10% contingency of $53,822 to allow for possible unforeseen costs for a total expenditure not to exceed $592,045, and I will make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
That concludes the recommendations forwarded from the Management Committee. However, as the Management Committee was charged with beginning the process to identify an executive search and recruiting services firm for the presidential search, I'd like to go through a bit of that timeline before I invite Janelle Vogler and Jim Fikert to come to the podium to take us through the next steps in narrowing the firms that will be invited to make presentations to the Board of Trustees at a special meeting scheduled for Tuesday, August the 20th at 8:30 a.m. The timeline to date has been as follows. The college's Procurement Services Department issues RFP 20-006 to identify an executive recruiting firm for the presidential search on July 23rd of this year. Procurement Services notified more than 170 firms of this opportunity. Interested firms have had until this past Friday, August the 9th at 2 p.m. to submit proposals in response to the RFP. The college received 11 proposals deemed responsive by Procurement Services. The evaluation committee to review proposals was comprised of the 7 Board of Trustees members. All board members had until last evening at 5 p.m. to score these 11 proposals and turn their evaluations in to Jim Fikert, Director of Procurement. Dr. Cook, at this time, I'd like to invite Janelle Vogler and Jim Fikert to the podium to present the results of our evaluation. And that concludes my report.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to present on this. I'm Jim Fikert. I'm the Director of Procurement Services for Johnson County Community College. Janelle Vogler, of course, Associate Vice President, Business Services. I just want to touch base where we're at on the process for the Executive Search and Recruiting Services for the JCCC President RFP. First, I would like to acknowledge and thank you, offer a big thank you to the Board of Trustees and the members of the Evaluation Committee. I know this was a short timeline, a bit of an aggressive timeline for reviewing all the proposals and the proposal responses that were sent in from the vendors. Thank you. I really, really appreciate the effort on that. Just touching base, Nancy kind of commented to a little bit of the process, but this can kind of be broken down into two phases. We've largely completed phase one of this RFP evaluation process where we had sent out the invitation to bid. We've received proposal responses from the vendors. We've evaluated and tallied those scores to an aggregate level. And now the next step, kind of where this yellow arrow is, kind of kicks off phase two in the RFP process, okay? And so what we're doing right now is we're going to talk about the top-ranked firms and determine who to shortlist or interview in that special committee on Tuesday. And so procurement will conduct reference checks against those top-ranked firms, and the committee will continue forward with conducting the interviews with those top-ranked firms. And hopefully at the end, we will indeed make an award to the most successful candidate, or to the, vendor. So again, the next steps, procurement will check the references. The evaluation committee conducts the evaluation committee rather is available and can conduct additional research at their discretion. Some examples of that would include some internet research or other publicly available information. The vendor presentations will occur Tuesday, right here in this room. We're allowing for 25 minutes for the presentation based on the discussion topics that you'll see here in just a second, and then 25 minutes for individual question and answer from the evaluation committee members. Again, I'd like to ask a reminder that not to have any outside communication with the vendors or the shortlisted firms at this time. If you have questions for them, please direct those through procurement services and myself, please. The results, the scoring tabulations, ranking the firms based on their aggregate totals out of 500 points. Again, this was for the 5 committee members that submitted evaluation responses in their matrices. It came down to kind of the top firms that you see here. Academic Search Incorporated on the left-hand side came in the highest at 416 points. AGB Search at 415 points, and so on down the list. We've got an alternate kind of table on the right-hand side. If you kind of went based only on individuals' choice rankings, kind of who they deemed number 1, number 2, number 3, so on, just individual committee members, those are some lower point scores. I kind of think of this in terms of golf scores, just to keep it simple. The lower the score, the better, okay? And so what you see, though, is exactly what we want to see in a typical RFP process. The top 3 firms are still the top 3 firms based on individual rankings from committee members or based on the total aggregate. And what you see is a good, clear cutoff of what we see. And at this point, we typically like to recommend, for shortlist purposes, the top 2 to 3 firms. And in this case, I've kind of highlighted the top 2 firms because of the clear cutoff in points. I think it makes sense to kind of look at that, look at it in terms of those two firms that are up there. Again, Academic Search Incorporated and AGB Search.
And I might just jump in just to explain to you what you have in front of you, and then we'll turn it back to Trustee Cook to lead a discussion among the trustees. So you have a copy of the presentation. You also have a copy of all of the scores by rating criteria and by firm. The next sheet is what Jim referred to as the choice point rankings. So each individual trustee who they ranked first, second, and third, and then this is the one with all the green boxes on it. So it kind of gives you a picture. We colored green the 1, 2, and 3 choices for each trustee. So that gives you an idea per firm, and that's summarized there. And then the very last page is all of the individual score sheets from each of the trustees. So as Jim said, we typically look for that clean cutoff. And this one worked out pretty well with the top two firms having kind of a cutoff and a drop to the next firm. But it is, I'm going to turn it back to Trustee Cook to have that discussion with the rest of the trustees.
Okay, so this is kind of, I think, a first, at least since I've been on the board, for all the trustees to be involved on the procurement process at this point, but we wanted to make sure that all trustees had a chance to have input into the selection of the firm. I guess at this point, I would ask for any, it appears that it's pretty clear, as you've indicated, Jim, the top three are both on, are the top three in both columns if we went to three. Comments or questions at this time? Trustee Snyder.
I would just note, I mean, it looked to me, while there were maybe some stylistic differences, it looked to me all firms were well qualified, and so it made, the decision process somewhat difficult, especially for someone like me that doesn't have experience going through these processes. Frankly, I would be comfortable with a number of them, and the two that came out on top, I would support moving those forward.
I would say that, thank you. I guess having been in the education business as a school superintendent, I've had a chance to go through some of these processes. And so I kind of looked at a couple of things. It seems to me that when you're a national company or even a local company, you do a bid process, you have a template. And I was pretty critical of some of the firms that forgot to change their template to Johnson County Community College. And in some cases, they referred to us as a university, not a community college. In a couple of cases, they didn't identify who the lead consultant and the team was going to be. So I was pretty critical of that detail, thinking that if they didn't attend to that detail, then what kind of detail would they tend to when they got to work with us? I obviously looked at the community college connection that these firms had, but beyond that, I also looked at repeat business. And if many of them have been in business for some time, and they have been called back by the community colleges in which they worked initially more than once. So that tells me that those colleges, without calling all those references, had confidence and faith in those companies to bring them back for multiple times. Those are some of the things I looked at in terms of evaluating, but I agree, Trustee Snyder, they have a lot of similarities. I was also interested primarily in their recruitment ability, and not just to respond to people that apply, but do they go out and aggressively recruit people that may not be interested in this position, but they would go after them and try and get them into the fold. So those are some of the basic things I kind of looked at. Trustee Snyder.
And I would just further note, I believe this is the order also that we received them in the packet. So to the extent someone took their book and read as they were in order, these were the top three. So that certainly could have some influence on people. You tend to remember some of the first and last and others. And we were juggling, I think, 11. Again, I support these, just noting.
And I would agree with that, but I think I was tougher in the beginning as I got, because I didn't know really what I was into. Well, until you kind of had your rhythm going, quite frankly, and you knew what you were looking at after the first couple. So I'm real pleased with that.
Trustee Cross?
I was thinking about grade normalization. I forget which law professor I had that talked about how they were more critical in the beginning, and then as you go through exams and you're reading through, you're like, oh yeah, that's what they're talking about. So we give them. I think that's how I got through. But no, I was completely overwhelmed with the process. I thank everybody for their help in it. I thank everyone for their comments. Is it appropriate now? Can I ask questions, or you want me to be quiet? What do you want right now?
You can ask questions.
Well, I mean, we just hired EFL, so I think it would make some sense to invite them. I don't want to freeze the process by having a local player, but I am impressed that EFL had many local, they had local graduates, they understand who we are, they deal with many of our partner institutions in the area. I suppose that's a pitch for them on some level to make it to Tuesday, although I have no reason to object to any of these other findings. So those are my thoughts.
Trustee Musil.
I'm going to make a couple comments that
Oh, and confidentiality, I agree with your comments.
Right. I was disappointed that several of these that are in the top didn't mention the fact that the process needs to be confidential until we get to finalists. And I thought that was fundamental to recruiting, especially the people that they call passive people that are happy where they are, aren't looking for something, but we're going to go find them. So I hope all these firms understand that confidentiality. I hope this board and the community understands that there has to be confidentiality until we get to finalists and we interview on campus. So that, as far as process, I agree with Trustee Crossley, but I was a little bit overwhelmed as well. And I think, so just, I want to find a president for at least 5 to 7 years, but the next time we do this, I do think there's some early alphabet bias here. And so maybe you mix them up. You guys are the procurement experts. And I think the next time it would be helpful if the board had a working session where we kind of agreed on what we were looking for a search firm. Because I think the things that Trustee Cook just mentioned were kind of the things I looked for. Community college experience. Have you done anything in the Midwest? How much return do you have? What's your DEI statement? But we didn't have any discussion about those as a board. And when we get to the position, to setting the position statement, and there are community town halls with all kinds of folks involved, I think the next time if we had that in advance, it would have made the process less overwhelming, because we would have had criteria that, I mean, the fee criteria means nothing to me. If we're going to invest in somebody for 7 years, I don't care if it's $55,000 or $80,000. So that, having that as 20% of the value didn't strike me as much. And you'll see I put the same number on all of them. So I think those are future things. I want to know from the board and from you as procurement people, we have 4 hours set aside next Tuesday, if I remember right. That seems like plenty of time, more than enough time to interview two, because it's hard to discern on paper what these people really have or are, or, you know, I would like to interview at least 3, and I don't know why we couldn't interview 4 in 4 hours. And then I know we're going to end up with a process like we do when we pick a trustee for a vacant position, where there's a set number of questions and we all have to ask the same questions, so it's fair, which drives me crazy because everybody responds differently. But is that how we're going to do those processes on Tuesday, that there will be a set of questions that we have to ask and we will divvy them up, or are we going to have a little bit of free reign to, I mean, within boundaries obviously, but to press these folks on, do you recruit as opposed to rely on your 77,000 person database? I mean, all these people have huge databases. Well, at those 77,000, one of them at least broke it down to how many are community college, how many are presidential chancellor levels, and how many are in the Midwest. But I want to know more about how many you think and the board thinks we ought to interview, because I'm much more interested in seeing 2 people or 3 people that we get to hear from and question than going through this book.
I was kind of looking at it, Trustee Musil, that we would be doing 3 to 4, not just 2.
I'm up for either 3 or 4, and I just want to see what the rest of the board
Is an hour enough time? I would like to do 4.
I'd like to do 4.
Well, if they have 25-minute presentation and our questions, I believe that'd be enough time. If they have
I'm going
the key points.
just because you're having this discussion topic, I'll put this up here. Since we were talking about just questions and kind of that allotted time, we kind of structured these procurement presentation topics as an idea to present to, or excuse me, as an agenda rather, for the firms so they could structure their presentation to the evaluation committee. That would kind of dictate the 25 minutes. But again, you would have 50 minutes per vendor and then 25 minutes dedicated to question and answer for any one of the evaluation committee members.
And to be clear, these questions we're bringing to you tonight, I think we sent them via email, but we want to know, we can ask different questions of these vendors on Tuesday, give them different topics to present.
But to answer Trustee Musil's questions, these would be presented for them to address during their 25 minutes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The board would have 25 minutes to ask other questions, and it does not have to be the same question to every vendor. Correct. In other words, if they say something and you want to ask a follow-up question during that portion, and it's an appropriate question, absolutely.
Don't let trustee Musil go free range.
So, Barbara, in response to that, as they respond to these 5 questions, I would then ask us to be thinking of a question, and we'll take one question per trustee at a time to go around that 25-minute period and focus in on your specific issues that you have for that particular firm. That's fair. Trustee Lawson, did you have a question?
Okay. I'd like to invite the HR Perry and Associates. They had the most detailed timeline out of all the candidates that I saw. It was very specific. It was also a mid-range price, just like the academic search. And their president is a person of color, as well as their diversity, equity, inclusion statement was, I think, the most, had the most substance. And the amount of individuals that were selected from underrepresented groups is impressive. So I think when we are putting commitments to DEI, I think it's important to include organizations.
Appreciate that. There were other firms that either were all female firms and or also had minorities on their team. I'm not sure they were all identified as being key consultants for this project. I know a couple of them were. Okay.
My concern with EFL is I think their approach when I read that did not reflect as much academically as the other ones. And the non-discrimination policy is not in line with ours.
Okay. Other comments?
The ACCT program, did we just not get a bid from them?
They did not respond.
They did not respond.
Are they mad at us?
We've reached out. Haven't heard back.
And I spoke to Mr. Brown about that as well. Noah Brown's our executive director, and he was going to check on it, but I never heard back from him. So I know they got the bid or the RFP, and they didn't respond. Can we agree on 3 or 4? Is there any disagreement with 3 or 4?
I like 4.
I like 4 is fine.
4? So hearing none, we'll focus on 4. Can we agree that academic search and AGB, they're top on both of those lists by pretty good score? Can we agree that they should be 2 of the 4?
Yes.
Okay. We have one viewpoint that we should have EFL. We've got another viewpoint we should have R.H. Perry. Try and be as equitable as we can as we go about selecting slot 3 and slot 4. EFL, I guess I was disappointed in the community college connection that they have in terms of placements nationally with president searches. And they certainly have, they're a good partner for us, obviously, with our other positions, but I guess unless I overlooked something, I thought their presidential searches at the community college level weren't as strong as some of the other companies.
Great.
And it is a local company, so back to our point of are we giving local companies good opportunities? Trustee Musil.
I had R.H. Perry as my 3rd choice, if I'm reading this right. That's what I remember. But rather than get into a lobbying effort with who we individually liked, there is a pretty clear break between 4 and 5. I did not have Myers-McCrae ahead of R.H. Perry Associates, but I would suggest that we take the first 4 on the list from points total.
So you're suggesting academic career in Myers-McCrae, correct?
I think that's consistent with the approach.
It's consistent with our scoring as a team, I guess.
I like R.H. Perry.
And who would you have them in place of?
Well, I take the top, you're asking me, Mr. Chair. I take the top two, R.H. Perry and EFL.
Well, academic career and executive search is pretty strong as the third slot.
No, but they're the third alphabetically.
I see.
I don't have any reason to, I'm not doing it. I don't have any reason to pick
my teacher mom about it.
Chair Cook, I've got a question. Do we have any issues by interviewing folks, by bouncing around without taking the top floor, bouncing around from 1, 2, and then down to 5 or 6? Are there any issues with that we've done this scoring? Is that arbitrary or?
No. The short answer is no. I mean, you arrive at this decision as much as possible out of objectivity against the criteria in the RFP, and that's a huge part of the public procurement process. But it's an RFP, so you certainly have the ability to interview anyone.
I will say though, to tag team to that, it is, if you can show by score, it does put that objectivity in the process, but it doesn't mean that you couldn't. It's just typically how we do these types of RFPs in public procurement. Is we try to make an objective decision based on the scoring.
Thank you. With that, I would support Trustee Cross's suggestion of bringing in R.H. Perry and EFL to round out the 4. And I'll just say for EFL, one of the reasons I scored them higher is because I noted they didn't have as strong experience, recruiting college presidents, but they have an outstanding record of recruiting business executives.
They do.
And I'm not one that thinks that we have a mandate to bring in an academic that's floated around community colleges, per se.
I would entertain a motion that we select Academic Search, Inc., AGB Search, and I'm hearing a consensus for R.H. Perry and EFL.
So moved.
Second.
Trustee Lawson.
Myers was number 5 for me, so I can see the first 2, Myers and RHB.
Trustee Musil.
Well, I don't want to be wed to this, as I've already talked about how overwhelming it is, but whether we knew exactly what we were doing in the process, we did a process that we tried to be objective, and the top 4, the 12-point difference between 4 and 5 is not insignificant. It's the same 12 points between 3 and 2. So I really am comfortable taking the top 4 there and respecting the fact that others on this board put Myers-McRae and academic career and executive search ahead of R.H. Perry, when I had R.H. Perry as my 3rd choice. But I don't think there's enough distinction between or among the applications to slice and dice too deeply. So I'll support the top 4. I won't be upset if we drop down to 5 and 6.
Well, my number 1 choice, I'll reveal, was Greenwood Asher, because I liked a lot about what they were about, and they're 7th.
That's just silly.
So I'm compromising on that.
Are you serious?
That was mine as well.
We have a motion and a second on the floor for Academic Search, AGB, R.H. Perry, and EFL, I believe was the motion. So if you vote in favor of that, I mean, if we have a majority on that, that's who they'll be. If you don't want those 4, I would say then you vote no on that issue.
Would it be appropriate, I don't think I've ever done this, to substitute the motion and ask for unanimity? Can we do that in the approval process? Like arrive at 4 and that everyone supports it?
Well, I really would like all 4 of us to support. I'd like for us to support all 4.
So I'm working to reach a consensus here so that I substitute a motion to say I support trustee Snyder and I's motion, but then further asked the board for a second that we.
Did you make the motion?
He made it, excuse me.
He brought it up.
Would you like,
Said you'd entertain it, and I said so moved.
would you like to withdraw your motion?
I would be happy to do that, and then just note that I have no objection to what trustee Musil suggested.
Would you withdraw your second?
I would.
So,
So moved.
council, have I done that properly, that they've withdrawn the motion?
So can I make a motion then?
Trustee Lawson.
Can I make a motion? That we vote on academic search, AGB search, Myers, McRae, and R.H. Perry and Associates.
Okay, we have a motion for 1, 2, 4, and 5. Is there a second?
I'm not going to second it. We agreed on the first two.
Okay, let's
Can we just,
do this if we
Vote on
can.
the
Trustee
third one.
Lawson, if you would, we don't have a second on it. Would you make a motion for approving academic search and AGB search, so we get the first two on the board?
Okay, so I will rescind that motion and then,
It just failed. You don't have to rescind it.
so that my motion would be to vote on academic search and AGB search as just the two that we're working towards.
Okay, we have a second. All in favor of inviting those two in, say aye.
aye.
Aye. Opposed? We have those two taken care of. Slots 3 and 4. I think it appears that Myers McRae is on both of those, all those lists. And so I would ask for a motion to approve Myers McRae.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to include Myers McRae. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
No.
Lindstrom, did you vote?
I did not.
Let's call the vote again. All in favor of Myers McRae, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
I'm going to change mine to aye because I said I'd support the top four.
So you leave me hanging out.
Okay, 6-1. So that is a 6-1
I
vote.
have nothing against Myers McRae. I really want.
And Trustee Cross said that he would support whatever we decide, so that's
I'll
good.
support the vote of the board.
So we've got 3. Academic search, AGB search, and Myers McRae.
Search, academic search, academic.
We have difference of opinion evidently between academic career and R.H. Perry.
I'd like to move to approve R.H. Perry and
Second.
Associates.
Motion to second. Any discussion? Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Yes.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So I think the 4, Jim and Janelle, are academic search, AGB search,
You counted my vote, sorry, I'm in favor of.
yeah, Myers McRae and R.H. Perry. And I would like to reinforce what Trustee Cross said, that we have, what's that big word you used? Unanimity?
The vote must be unanimous.
That we
That'll never-
unanimously support as a board those 4 firms to be called in on next Tuesday. Thank you. It is a laborious process, and for all of you snickering and laughing out in the public watching this group try and find 4 people, I agree with you. It's kind of a challenging thing to do. So, but thank you very much. So, Trustee Ingram,
That's my report.
that concludes the management report. Okay, thank you. Next, and thank you, Janelle and Jim. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next item is the Audit Committee report. And I have that here somewhere. The Audit Committee met on Thursday, August 8th. In your packet, you see everybody that was present. We had an update on activities and audits. We did the biannual travel and expense review. Mr. McDade presented the results of the review, noting that reimbursements were found to be reasonable, complete, accurate, and substantially in compliance with policies. We had 2 non-conforming expense reimbursements which have been addressed and clarified, where they weren't big issues but taken care of. Proposed updates, trustee use of college resource and reimbursement guidelines. Mr. McDade indicated that the guidelines are being updated to mirror the following JCC Board policies: reimbursement of travel expenses policy, same-day travel operating procedures, overnight travel operating procedures, and appropriate expenditures on college funds operating procedure. We're cleaning up those policies so there's no misunderstanding or confusion. Those policies are going through our policy review committee as all policies go through. Those policies will come back to this board. I think, Justin, we were targeted October. It'll go through the Policy and Procedures Committee between now and September, and then they'll come back to this board for approval.
Is Justin here? Mr. McDade here?
Yes. Annual trustee expense reimbursement report. Mr. McDade presented the trustee expense report for fiscal year 18-19. Quarterly projects update. Mr. McDade highlighted projects planned for the upcoming quarter. These included the outsourced IS audit of hardware and software licenses and a review of the JCC facility rental program. Ms. Warner shared a presentation which highlighted the vision behind the Business Continuity Initiative and provided a status update on the project, which, by the way, was really well done. The Business Continuity Initiative is if for some reason, natural or other situation that causes the college to close. What is our business continuity program to continue the operation of the college? And I want to assure the board that I think Nancy and I both really feel good about what the college is doing in that whole initiative. A lot of work. Ms. Warner emphasized the importance of collaboration and teamwork in achieving the gains made thus far, and the key role these factors will continue to play in closing the gap, which have been identified. Ethics report line update. Between April 1 and June 30, 12 reports were received via the JCCC Ethics Report Hotline. 4 reports were received anonymously, and as of August 1st, 2019, all have been reviewed and 9 have been appropriately addressed, and the other 3 are being taken care of. JCC Behavioral Intervention Team, the COPS Watch student complaints. Mr. McDade and Dr. Weber presented a year-to-date and an annual statistical report of the COPS Watch case data. Dr. Weber and Paul Kyle both provided insights on the data presented in the Student Complaints Portal report. We do have one recommendation tonight on our working agenda for the 2019-2020 school year. And it is the recommendation of the Audit Committee that the Board of Trustees approve the fiscal year 2019-2020 Audit Committee working agenda as shown subsequently in your board packet. And I'll make that motion. And if I can't, I guess I probably shouldn't make the motion. I'll ask you to make the motion.
So moved.
So moved.
So we have a motion and a second on the working calendar. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
6-1 vote. And that concludes the Audit Committee report.
Could I just add something to that? I know at the meeting the other day, I had asked a question about the student processes, and someone had asked me about it from the community, and I wanted to reiterate that we have a formal complaint process. I do not doubt that complaint process at all, and I just want to make that publicly clear that I believe we are doing a very good job, that sometimes there are not even formal complaints that are made that are addressed by our staff, and I just want everyone to know that I think we're doing a great job with that. The Audit Committee only meets quarterly, so I did want to provide that info. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Human Resources, Trustee Lawson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Get to my calendar here. We met on August 2nd, and we reviewed the Human Resource Committee working agenda for 2019 to 2020. The changes that were done, every year they find a different group of people that they want to do a salary study on, and this year is going to be the non-exempt positions. Then there's also, let me move this back, the Human Resource Technology Support Initiatives. They added provide updates on the new applicant tracking system implementation. Becky, I don't know if you want to explain just a little bit about that.
The applicant tracking system, the system we've had now, we've had for about 7 years. And so we went out for an RFP, and the board approved PageUp as our new vendor. So this will be probably a year-long implementation for us to actually get it up, get it working. It'll be talking to Banner. So our information will go from banner into the page up system and then back to us. And so we will probably have it up and running in the spring, but we'll have both systems running side by side just to make sure that it goes seamless. But this is the system that applicants, people who are applying for positions at the college, they would use it, hiring supervisors would use it, and then HR would use it. So we're excited about it.
So it's the recommendation of the Human Resource Committee that the Board of Trustees approve the Human Resource Committee working agenda for 2019 to 2020 as shown in the board packet.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
And the next item that we looked at was the social media policy. And just making sure, pulling up the agenda here, apologize. So the social media policy seemed pretty standard. It crossed out and just changed a few words. The one question that I had was the change from JCC personnel policies to the college policies and procedures. I wanted to find out what those procedures were, and I was informed by our college attorney that it was just a change in the language, but the policies still remain as if it was original. Then the other question I have is the students and employees, that the social media policy just reflects students and employees. And that was the gist of the social media policy. Is there
So there is a
recommendation there?
yeah.
It is a recommendation of the HR committee that the Board of Trustees accept the recommendation of the college administration to approve the modification to the social media policy 520.00 as shown in the board packets.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
And the rest of the committee, we talked about different salary grades in our consent agenda, the different pay ranges from the levels going up, and talked about if any questions or concerns about staff versus full-time, the different terminologies used, how that would be seen in the board packet. Then we went down and got a nice report for the health retirement HRA, and then we also had some public members who wanted to find out some more questions about the voluntary employee in retirement benefit called VERB and get some update on that. We did find out that there would be a small increase in the salary because there was the 3% increase in everyone's salary, so that added $180,000 to the participants. The eligible participants that we had voted on back a few months ago was about 280. After reflecting on everything, there was about 15 extra eligible participants, and that added $320,000. So there are 295 eligible participants for $6.3 million, and each participant is about $21,300. And I know you had some questions in the Human Resource Committee, so I wasn't sure if you wanted to mention anything about that.
Well, I think Trustee Ingram reported from the Management Committee that you looked at the VERB program, Voluntary Employee Retirement Benefit, and we had initially reserved $5.8 million for that, and now we're reserving $6.3 million. And I had some concerns about that increasing each year because we don't know how many become eligible and how many take it, but we know that if salaries increase, that will increase the level, and it simply is, I mean, we adopted it, which I supported. It's something we need to keep an eye on because it freezes amount of our reserves that we can't use for anything else. But we've adopted it, and we have to be cognizant of whatever the number is, and so Jerry and Becky got the number right, so it is what it is.
Okay. The last section was the overview of the employee engagement survey, the group comparisons. It broke it down by 3 different categories: the overall favorability of class description, and that was broken down by part-time, full-time, bargaining unit, 10-month bargaining unit, admin, and then favorable by age, 25 to about 66, and tenure, anybody working less than 1 year to 15 years and over. I know I had some concerns about this because from looking at this, it felt like I could easily target who are the low favorable marks on here. And I think that was something that is not exactly what research is supposed to do when we come back with some feedback forms. So we talked about that. And then what was mentioned is the favorability score was basically determined on an overall versus the net, overall was a net positive or negative. I think Dr. McLeod talked about that. There was a question about how is the measurement grouped, and the explanation was, for example, if there was 8 questions out of 12, then that would be an overall positive favorability. So the concerns I have around that methodology is, for example, say this bottled water or popcorn or whatever I have on my desk here, if 4 of the questions that I have are about packaging and the packaging I like, but the 1 question that I have is terrible taste, that would be based on this methodology as a positive rating. So the weight on each measurement is not making sense, as when a lot of the questions that we're looking at that I heard sounded, if there's a positive rating score of I like my coworkers, but a negative score on distrusting senior leadership, that there's no weight, that's all seen as equal, and that is then seen as positive. So there was concerns from me when I look at this data. And then I also contacted Quantum to ask them just about their best practices. I did not ask them, we did not discuss the data from the college, and I wanted to be able to understand how they conduct their business and their model. I learned that averaging this way can create some false interpretations of the data that companies are providing us. And that data we received had such a strong data integrity that these additional breakdowns should not be necessary. So then listening to MELANIE HARVEY talk about the issues that are starting to come forward from the listening sessions, it concerns me if these listening sessions are used as witch hunts for troublemakers, because I can already identify who they are, and I'm not understanding that. So those are some concerns that I had when we received this information, and I continue to have some concerns about the follow-through of this information.
Any questions of Trustee Lawson? Trustee Musil.
Well, I might add a little different perspective on this. We have already had the detailed slicing and dicing of the engagement survey, and that was reported to Human Resources Committee a month ago. There are about 3,000 ways you could look at this data, and this was one way to look at it. It wasn't presented as the final answer. It wasn't presented as the only way to analyze the data. It was presented as one way to look at it. We have heard from the start of the engagement survey that the concern and the protections against identifying small groups of people so that you can identify somebody. And the groups that were shown there, people that have been here under a year, that's a number of people. People who have been here over 15 years is a large number of people. And I know that Karen Martley is careful in that. I appreciate Melanie's statement that she heard from one person that thought that they had heard back from their supervisor. That's inappropriate, and I'm sure will be dealt with. And there are plenty of ways for employees, not just faculty, who Melanie mentioned have some extra protections, to report incidents where they believe their supervisor has come back and done something to them. If somebody could point to me anything that resembled a witch hunt on this campus in the 8 years I've been here before, I would be surprised. You have to use the data in various ways to get to the goals that we all want. And I have utmost faith in Karen and her team to do that. And if anybody has a concern that their supervisor is using that against them, I hope they will report it up through the proper channels, because if it gets to the president or this board, I know it will be taken care of swiftly.
Karen, where are we now with regards to the listening sessions?
We completed our last listening sessions this week during professional development days. So now that we have information, we need to roll that information up and take a look at it and then determine next steps, set some priorities around that.
And then are you going to be putting together a report, or how are you going to report the roll-up?
It will be a report back. I'm not sure what that's going to look like yet. I've said in the listening sessions, I'm not the one that can make that decision by myself, so we have to determine what that model's going to look like and who we'll work with on it.
Okay, very good. Learning quality, Trustee Snyder.
Mr. Chair, I wasn't finished. So one of the concerns I heard for this evaluation was where are the benchmarks? How do we know we're being successful in the process that we're rolling out? And what I kept hearing back was, well, you take this survey again in 2 years, except Quantum, their best practice is actually 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and 1 year later, where you engage company leaders, local leaders, managers, and teams in a very structured outline. So to just take another test or a survey in 2 years is going to replicate a very similar voice. So I know that that's best practices that are out online, so I'm curious as to how we can utilize.
There are best practices for the survey and for pulse surveys. I'm not sure which one you're talking about.
It seems like Quantum has a pretty basic
They do, they have
structured
they have
timeline for action.
They have pulse surveys that you can push out throughout the year as well, too, as a follow-up.
So are you saying you're not familiar with what I'm talking about?
I'm familiar with the pulse surveys and then the regular survey.
So the
Because the pulse-
timeline for action breakdown by responsibility?
Mr. Chair.
Are you familiar with that? The 3 months, 6 months, 9 months? It sounds
The
like.
Pulse surveys.
I think you're talking about the pulse surveys and the 3, 6, and 9 month.
Trustee Cross.
It's usually a recommendation.
I'll never forget, Miss Martley, I think it was my senior year at Lawrence High. I took some Shakespeare class. I do love Shakespeare, good Shakespeare. And my dad had always said to me, you know, when I was reading Shakespeare, going through the early plays, like, how did this guy come up with this? You know, this is brilliant. My dad's like, well, he's just trying to make money. He was trying to get people into the theater. He was trying to get people to watch it. I understand and appreciate Trustee Lawson's questions, but it seems to me that Quantum's in the business of selling stuff. I mean, is it possible that they want you to have the survey more often so that you'll buy their service more often?
Well, I mean, when you look at best practices, it also has to fit your culture too. So when we look at trying to run a 1-year cycle on an employee engagement survey, one of the things that we come up against are we have people that are out for 3 months, so it's hard to get full participation during that time. We have a pretty lengthy break during the holiday break as well too, between semesters and spring break. So when we start to factor all of those things in, by the time you roll it out, then you have really large gaps between getting that data and then handing that information back out. So that's one of the reasons we're on a 2-year cycle.
And it reminds me of, I think it was first 2 or 3 years here, Dr. Sopcich used to talk about how there was initiative fatigue. We had initiative fatigue after, I don't know, I don't mean to say.
It's good memory, yeah.
But
Initiative fatigue.
It seems to me in order to have more meaningful input in the process, you stagger it out. I'm just a dumb lawyer. I have to boil it
Well,
down.
that's part of it, and part of that was the recommendation when we worked with the committee that did the initial implementation. You know, how we would stagger that out, what the length of time would be to roll that out. You could certainly do one once a year, but I'm not sure we would complete a full cycle, get all the training in, and start to get the implementation and talk to everybody within 1 year. It would be a really quick turn in our culture.
Thank you.
I appreciate the detail of the discussion, and I appreciate trustees interested in some of that detail. But I would say again that we have a talented staff that deal with these kinds of things day in and day out. I think we as a board know that there's an issue on communications, whether it was through HLC or the engagement survey. I believe those issues are being addressed, will continue to be addressed, and I have all the confidence in our staff to do what's right, whether we test do a survey every 3 months or 6 months or 2 years. Trustee Musil.
No, I'm done.
Okay. Trustee Snyder, learning quality.
That concludes my report. Thank you.
Trustee Snyder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your hardworking learning quality committee met on Monday, August 5th at 8:30 in the morning. Minutes of that meeting are in the packet. One of the highlights of the meeting was a sabbatical presentation by Dawn Gale, professor of philosophy here. She was able to go to Israel and further her Jewish studies. That had been a lifelong dream of hers. Trustee Lindstrom was able to tie back the trip that you all took, and I think it was meaningful for him as well. So it was a real interesting presentation, and sabbaticals in general, I think, are one of the reasons that, a faculty benefit here that is one of the reasons we have high retention of faculty. So hopefully we can continue that. I have 3 recommendations tonight. The first 2 are slight policy updates. The first one ensures that policy numbers and references tie back to appropriate documents. So it is the recommendation of the Learning Quality Committee that the Board of Trustees accept the recommendation of the college administration to approve modification to the Students with Disabilities Policy 322.00 as shown subsequently in the board packet. And I make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
My
Motion
second
carries.
recommendation deals with how the college determines academic standing. It is the recommendation of the Learning Quality Committee that the Board of Trustees accept the recommendation of the college administration to approve modification of the academic standing policy 314.06 as shown in the board packet, and I will move that motion.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
And Mr. Chairman, my final recommendation deals with the academic calendar. It is the recommendation of the college administration and the faculty association that the Board of Trustees approve the 2021-22 academic calendar as shown in the board packet, and I will move that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Trustee Musil.
I know, when do we implement the 12-week semester versus 13 or whatever the numbers were?
We're a year out, and we're moving back from 16 to 15.
Okay, so it will start fall of 20?
Yes.
Okay.
And this is the second iteration of planning for that calendar, so last year we approved it for that first implementation, and they've worked out a couple more kinks. Do we vote?
No.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
That concludes my report.
Thank you, Trustee Snyder. President's recommendations, Treasurer's report, Trustee Musil.
Mr. Chair, the board packet contains the preliminary unaudited Treasurer's report for fiscal year ended June 30th, 2019. We're on a fiscal year July 1 through June 30th. It does not include fiscal year-end adjustments. Some items of note, page 1, in the general post-secondary technical education fund summary, total revenues increased by 3.5% in 19 over 18, primarily due to $5.1 million increase in property tax revenues resulting from increased assessed valuation. The college's mill levy was reduced by 0.25 mills in fiscal year from 9.50 to 9.25. The general PTE fund expenses were approximately $142 million, $3 million more than in the previous year as far as expenses, primarily related to the capital expenditures on our facilities master plan. Our unencumbered cash balance at the end of the year was $121.3 million, about almost $5 million higher than the same time last year. And during June, we received $42,255,792 in property tax revenues from the county. And all the expenditures in the primary operating funds were within approved budgetary limits. So it's a recommendation of the college administration that the Board of Trustees approve the Treasurer's report for the month ended June 30, 2019, subject to audit, and I so move.
Second. Motion and a second. Any discussion? Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Monthly report to the board. Dr. Sopcich.
Thank you, Dr. Cook. First of all, the monthly report to the board, there's some incredible things in there. I'd like for you, though, on page 18, to note that earlier tonight we heard Beth Edmonds speak, and head of the Faculty Senate, and she's featured on page 18 as someone who was invited to a 2-day event at NSF, that's National Science Foundation headquarters in Alexandria, Virginia, to review the NSF STEM Track 2 Design and Development grants for single institutions that award grants up to $1 million. This is Beth's third time that she's been a participant in this, and has really led greater, I guess you could say, engagement with the NSF with community colleges. And this is fantastic. She represents our college extremely well at that level. Second, I'd like to recognize Karen Martley and her team, and I see Farrell back there in row 2. for an outstanding PDD week of professional development days. I mean, it was excellent. The in-service was fantastic. A lot of good reviews on that. It's a lot of hard work. How many sessions, how many PDD sessions did you put together?
80-some.
80-some. And so that's like about 80 individual presenters plus probably those around us at this table were part of that. Dr. Weber's presentation was so popular, it went on for 2 hours, 60 minutes over the original time designation. So thank you for a wonderful PDD for this semester. It's a great way to get started.
What does PDD stand for again?
What?
What's PDD stand for
It's
again?
Professional Development Days.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I'd like to make the record clear that I did say that. I did do the acronym. Tonight, we're going to have a lightning round of one. There is much discussion, obviously, about the HLC and what we need to do over the upcoming months. And I've asked Sherry Barrett. Sherry is our Director of Office of Assessment, Evaluation, and Institutional Outcomes. Sherry, you're going to give us a little overview of what we need to do over the upcoming year, correct?
Correct.
But before you get started, how many years have you worked with HLC?
You know, I had to think about that because my first foray into working in higher education was at the University of Missouri Kansas City campus. And in my very first year, I did an accreditation report for a specialized accrediting body for the School of Business. So early on in my academic career, I got involved in accreditation, and I have been an active member of the Higher Learning Commission for 18 years now. I sit on a board of a specialized accrediting agency where we make decisions about programs, and I've been a chair, site team reviewer. I'm getting ready for a visit in Ohio coming up in October. I just finished a portfolio. I have mentored organizations on behalf of the Higher Learning Commission, so I am an accreditation geek and proud of it. So I have a lot of experience in this realm.
And we're so lucky to have you here working for JCCC. So Sherry, why don't you take us through this presentation?
So I'm an academic at heart, and I can't do any presentation without setting context. And so as I look to what I want to talk to the board about tonight, I had to look to the past, the present situation, and then the future moving forward. I don't know how many, if I quiz the group and quiz the Board of Trustees specifically, I don't know if you could tell me when this campus gained its accreditation. There's a hint on the screen. 1975. We became a candidate in 1972 because it's a long process. So a little bit about accreditation. And I know you guys have missed me this last year when I wasn't here talking about it constantly, but it is both a process and a status. We go through the ongoing process every day in many, many ways. We go through a process of ongoing accreditation. We are constantly in the process of accreditation. We're constantly looking forward in our accreditation processes. It is also a status. An institution is accredited because of the processes they go through. The accredited status means that students, the public, can have confidence in the kind of programs that we offer and the kind of institution that we are. The JCCC is an accredited institution by the Higher Learning Commission. We have 10 years of accreditation at this point in time. This is my favorite slide, and just for the record, in case Greg Musil asked me, I have all the acronyms written down so that
I'm impressed.
Okay. I just wanted to show this because accreditation is fairly complex and is influenced by a large number of factors. There's things like NACICI, which is the National Advisory Committee for Institutional Quality and Integrity. It is the body that accredits the accrediting institutions and works with the Department of Education. PEAK was a former accrediting process that we had at the Higher Learning Commission that stood for Peer Evaluator Quality Assurance. We have CHIA, who is another organization that works in coordination with the Higher Learning Commission, and CHIA is the Council for Higher Education Accreditation. Federal compliance. If I could draw a picture of federal compliance, it would have started as a dot about 10 years ago and would now fill the entire slide in terms of the impact it has had on the accreditation processes. Assumed practices. Those are things that we must adhere to, all institutions that have a certain level that you must meet at the very base. Those are kind of like the assumed thing. Well, of course, it's in the title. Assumed practice is the floor that we all build upon. NCA, some of you are old enough to remember when it was called the North Central Association of Schools and Colleges before it became the Higher Learning Commission. The criterion for accreditation, it is an ever-changing. We have this idea in our heads that the criterion is a fixed thing that just sits there. By federal mandate, every 5 years, every accrediting body must go through the processes of reevaluating their criteria for accreditation. Beth referenced in her beginning thing that she looked at the 2020, because even the criterion by which we were accredited this last time, which was the 2018, will change in the fall of 2020, and we will have new criteria for accreditation. That's what I mean when I say it's always forward-looking, because it's always changing. Standard pathway is fairly new. We were an AQUIP school up until this past summer. AQUIP was Academic Quality Improvement Program, and it was a measure by which we, as an institution, beginning in the early 2000s, were always looking at ways that we could improve ourselves around a series of practices, which I'm going to highlight briefly. So right now, at this moment in time, because I checked the website this afternoon and they haven't changed yet, we have the assumed practices that all schools must address. It covers everything from the Board of Trustees. What is the role of the board in terms of approving the budget? What is the role of the board in adopting board policy and hiring a president? That's it. It's also addressing things like, do we have the appropriate resources in place? Do we have the appropriate evaluation of faculty? The right faculty. When things came out about faculty credentialing, that came under the idea of assumed practice. Criteria for accreditation itself, I mentioned there are 5 of those that we'll look at that are in the process of changing even as we speak. And the federal compliance, which is an ever-shifting sand upon which we try not to sink. And that has to do with our ability to give federal financial aid. And has to do with practices related to those federal financial aid. It is, in fact, the largest report we submit when we go through the accreditation process. It was over 1,000 pages. Light reading for your bedtime. So, criteria for accreditation is very broad. It speaks to mission. Do we as an institution have a mission that is stated publicly? Do we adhere to that in our decision-making processes? Do we understand ourselves as an open access community colleges? Do we set policy? Do we set procedures? Are we supportive of that mission? Criterion do has to do with ethics, integrity, and responsible conduct. Again, it talks to things about the board. Is the board in their lane? Is the college in its lane? How do we act purchasing, even things like how do we deal with vendors outside, et cetera. Criterion 3 and 4, I think this is really important to note because for the Higher Learning Commission, it's all about teaching and learning. Guess what? That's our primary mission. And so we talk about things like resources and support and evaluation and improvement. Those wonderful things like student learning outcomes that I'm very fond of. And then finally, criterion 5 has to do with resources, planning, and institutional effectiveness. These are broad categories, but what's within those broad categories do respond to things like the Higher Authorization Act that has to be voted on. It responds to the Department of Education and pressures that they place upon the Higher Learning Commission. I've mentioned before, in 2009, the Higher Learning Commission got a visit from our favorite Inspector General of the United States, and there were a lot of things that came out of that based on the pressures from that particular agency. Also, the Consumer Advocate Bureau, the Consumer Bureau has gotten involved in accreditation and what we tell our students and what we promise our students. Some of that was based on some of the debacle, I'll call it, related to for-profit institutions. AQUIP. I want to talk just a minute about AQUIP because I think sometimes we get a little in the weeds understanding what AQUIP is. I know there's been references by folks on campus and sometimes occasionally in meetings here about AQUIP and whether or not we're meeting those. They are not the criteria for accreditation. Let me be plain about that. They are instead a series of categories that we could organize continuing improvement projects around. And they morphed over time as well. When we first became an AQUIP institution and filed our 2011 report, we had 9 categories. And you see those 9 listed there. In the meantime, they shifted to 6 categories. And this past summer, it went away altogether. AQUIP is no longer a pathway by which we can maintain our accreditation. We are no longer, no school is a pathway for AQUIP. Instead, it's open pathway and standard pathway. Open pathway, which is what we are right now, are institutions that are in good standing and they're moving forward through their accreditation processes. So let's look for just half a second at the timeline for our recent accreditation history. I decided not to go back to 1975. I thought you might get a little restless. So I started in 2010, which was the last big change request that we put in as an institution. And that was for us to offer distance education, to join that online universe. And we were approved for that. Next, in 2011, we submitted what was called a midterm systems portfolio. And the purpose for those midterm portfolios as an AQUIP institution was to give us suggestions on some different projects we might undertake as an AQUIP institution to prepare us for the final submission of our 8-year portfolio, which is the culminating portfolio. We did that in June of 2017. We submitted our 8-year systems portfolio, and for the first time since we became an AQUIP institution, again, because accreditation is always a moving target, we had a comprehensive site visit because that was a new requirement for AQUIP schools. And so we had a wonderful team come. We loved them. There are 7 of them. But they came and spent 3 days with us as an institution. And out of that, we were reaccredited for 10 years with an interim report that we received a staff analysis on in July of 2019, which brings us to now. So we received that staff analysis, and they gave us 9 months to complete some steps. And really, if you look at the 2 reports, what the original feedback from the site team was and what we received as a staff analysis, it is a completion of the work that was begun. The work that Mickey and the Faculty Senate and Faculty Association undertook is being continued. They've asked us to, first of all, they said, you need to capture this work because they want us to report it out. So we're going to keep track of all the work that's done this coming year and write about it. Second, they want us to create and review and approve institutional policies. Okay, so we're looking at a cross-functional team of faculty, of staff, and administration to research what's standard practice, what's good practice, who are institutions that we think do this really well from a shared governance standpoint, and recommend institutional structures in support of shared governance. We'll make that recommendation to the cabinet, which would make that recommendation to the board for those kinds of institutional documentations. The Faculty Association and Faculty Senate have been asked to provide documentation on their responsibilities to work together to determine, the faculty have to determine this, what is that, those responsibilities, what are those roles, and how are they going to play out? So that's the work that they're undertaking. And then finally, we have to reply to this by May 1st of 2020. And guess what? This is my favorite part. By the time we turn this May 1st document in, I'll begin the next assurance argument because it's an ever-moving, ever-forward process. So this next summer, I'll start a next assurance argument, which will be due in 2 years. So we're always moving forward. We also always are doing yearly reports to the Higher Learning Commission that involves institutional research around our fiscal responsibility, around our counts, around our numbers, those kinds of things. So I wanted to give you a nice broad context for accreditation in general, how we as an institution participate in it, and the very nature of it, which is always forward, constantly forward, everywhere forward. That's a quote, by the way, by an abbot from the 3rd century. So it's always been about forward. So can I answer any questions?
Sherry, let me just start it out by saying that, and you heard tonight, the Faculty Association, the Faculty Senate have been consistent in their request for shared governance.
Mm-hmm.
We've discussed it a little bit in collegial steering since I've been on the committee and prior to that. Are you confident that through the steps you've just outlined, that between administration, faculty association, faculty senate, that by May 1, actually submitted by then, prior, probably March or so, we'll have an institutional piece, as you called it, that everybody will have input into the shared governance issue?
I would say I am confident, but I'd include one more group that you didn't mention, and that's in this group we're going to have AMS and staff, hourly staff represented, because institutional governance is not about any one group. It's about all the voices. And so we have different branches of the college. They need to be involved in that institutional shared governance. One of the discussions that we've had with Cabinet regarding this next step for us is the fact that currently we don't have a framework upon which to rest shared governance. We haven't ever adopted a framework upon which we could say, this is the operational processes we're going to go forward with. I think this committee, with its cross-functional, with faculty voice, with staff voice, and administrative voice, I think it is, without a doubt, the mechanism by which we can reach that agreement. And I think the Faculty Senate and the Faculty Association are entirely capable folks that can reach an understanding of their roles and responsibility and codify that as well.
And if you would, go back to the criteria for accreditation,
Sure.
if you would. So I'm going to distribute to you while we're talking about this, our approved board policies as it relates to duties and responsibilities of a trustee and the board. But as you look at this slide, I really appreciate criterion 3 and 4, teaching and learning. And it's so easy for an institution of this size to get caught up in other issues that we sometimes forget the focus of what we're here for.
Correct.
And that's criterion 3 and criterion 4, teaching and learning, all driven by a strong mission. And hopefully we are doing that with high integrity, ethical, and responsible conduct. I was interested in your comment about this whole governance issue also involves trustees.
Mm-hmm.
And we as trustees probably forget about what our responsibilities are. I asked Terry to put together a copy for use for a quick reminder, but I've pulled out of sequence Code of Conduct Policy 114. And I think if you listen to Sherry talk about HLC expectations of a trustee, it was select, support, and promote the success of the president through the evaluation process and that whole selection process which we're about to encounter. Secondly, to adopt policy. And most of those policies are driven by administration up to, through our committee work to our board. And then we have a fiduciary responsibility to ensure, as we've adopted the budget, that we know where the revenue is coming from and we have some idea of where we're spending the money. And I would add a fourth to that, and I believe a fourth responsibility of a trustee is to be a positive community ambassador for the college in the community. These are consistent with ACCT, with KACCT, with any kind of training that we have for trustees on best practices, those four things. And I'd like to draw your attention to the Code of Conduct Policy 11401, which is the front cover of the handout I just gave you. And I'm going to take some time to share some of these because I think all of us fall into a behavior sometimes of forgetting who we are and what we are as trustees. If you go down to bullet item number 3, to work with fellow board members in a spirit of harmony and cooperation in spite of differences of opinion. I thought Trustee Cross did a nice job tonight talking about, will we have unanimity when we finish this process for a search firm? We need to work together. That arises during vigorous debates of points of issue. Civility and mutual caring for one another and for the employees of the college shall guide the conduct of board members. And it goes on to say, board members shall promote mutual respect among one another and among all college employees and shall not use their position to embarrass, intimidate, or threaten employees. Members of the Board of Trustees are leaders in the community and their conduct is important to the college and to the community. Next bullet point, to base personal decisions upon all available facts in each situation, to vote their honest conviction in every case, unswayed by partisan bias of any kind, therefore to abide by and uphold the final majority decision of the board. We've had differences on votes tonight. That's fine. We have differing viewpoints on the issues. But what this really says is when we walk out of this room, then we're going to support what that action the board took and not create problems outside of this board meeting. Next bullet item, to remember at all times that as an individual, the board member has no legal authority outside the meetings of the board. Therefore, the board member must conduct relationships with the college employees, the local citizenry, and the press on the basis of this fact and engage in no private action that will compromise the board. And down to the last bullet item, not that the others aren't important, to forward through the board or chair, the board chair or college president, any request for information about college employees. And it goes on to the next page, to bear in mind that the primary function of the board is to establish effective policies for the college and to delegate authority for the administration of the educational program and the conduct of college business to the president and employees. And as chair, I would remind again that anytime we have a request for information at the college, that we go through the president of the college or through myself as chair. We've been spending a lot of time as staff dealing with lots of requests, and I look around, I think we're all guilty. It's easy for me to forget about going to the president's office and going to see somebody about an activity that somebody has asked me about. And I thought this was a good time, Sherry, to support what HLC says about trustee governance, to review our own policies that you have all approved. And so then the issue becomes, are we behaving accordingly? Any comments or questions of Sherry Berry? Trustee Snyder.
Thank you. Sherry, appreciate all your expertise and help through these endeavors. My question is what, if there are any board actions that will need to be taken as we go down this process?
There probably will be. So what's happening right now on this current timeline is once the groups are pulled together, which that process is getting started, they'll be meeting through probably December, and our goal will be to have a recommendation to Cabinet that would come up then through the appropriate board processes for either, we're having some discussion with council, either a board policy and or a board endorsement of whatever that structure is going to be. So the plan going forward, so that you all are aware of all the steps we're taking, is that you'll see my shining face more often. I will be at probably every other board meeting to answer any questions or give you an update on the current processes and how they're going from the institutional policy standpoint. Other people are dealing with the FAFS stuff, and they'll, I'm sure, report out. My office is going to be dealing with this institutional policy question.
Thank you.
Trustee Musil.
I don't want to suggest, matter of fact, you are not eligible for verb, I just declared. I don't know how long you plan to stay here, but I think it's such a valuable asset. Is there a mentee? Are we supporting somebody to continue to do this on behalf of the college? I think it's so helpful to have somebody that goes to other schools and does the accreditation study. We talk about succession planning in many ways. It seems like this is a very important, because you've been so valuable, at least to me, explaining this as we go through it for the first time in decades, that I really want to make sure we give you support to have somebody that might step into your shoes 10 or 20 years from now.
We have been encouraging faculty and folks. In fact, I've got one I think I have on the hook right now that I'm going to try and pull in to come to the annual meeting this next spring. We've had a few folks that have applied for peer review status. It's not as easy as it sounds. They're looking for certain skill sets in any given call for peer evaluators. I'm lucky I'm in a field of assessment, and they always want assessment people. So we are encouraging folks to apply for those peer evaluator opportunities when they come along. We're trying to take faculty and staff with us to the Higher Learning Commission so we can begin to get them interested in those processes and applying and being part of this. I was very fortunate when I came along into the process. I was fortunate with the field I was studying in that I was able to get on early on, and I've had a great wonderful experience. I think I benefit. I do try and bring that benefit to the college with all the different structures I've seen with the different schools. I will joke and say that of the schools that I have been to that are on probation or in trouble, faculty governance and specifically actually institutional governance has been a recurring theme. I even had one school that was on probation due to some misconduct by trustees and their president. So there's lots of ways. Financial is also another one, and assessment of student learning. So I've seen all these different activities, and there's always a way back. The whole thing about accreditation, it's always about moving forward, building on your strengths, making sure that you meet these criteria. And I believe in the folks we have here in the room are the people that can make this happen.
Thanks, Sherry. Dr. Sopcich.
Sherry, you didn't make it explicitly clear because you referred to this responsibility falling to your office, but you yourself will chair this institution-wide task force.
I will. Yes.
That's a ringing endorsement. I mean, that makes me, enthusiasm is.
The joke was I was at a cabinet meeting to discuss something else, and somebody threw me under the bus. But I am going to chair. Yeah, I am okay. I am going to chair the group because.
Here's my card.
Yeah. I am going to chair this group of cross-functional folks that are going to come together and talk about this. For one thing, I think I have the experience to at least bring to it the expectations of the Higher Learning Committee, or Higher Learning Commission for this, also looking at AGB and other national organizations that have set policy regarding shared governance. And I think we can get there with the right people at the table, which is including everybody.
And Sherry, what's your first step going to be?
The first step that I took actually ties very nicely with what Dr. Cook just did. I've set a list of what I consider appropriate conduct for the task force. I want this to be collegial. I want this to be with a spirit of listening and responding to one another in a collegial manner with respect and honestly listening to the ideas that come out and looking at best practice, et cetera. So I set a code of conduct, as it were, for the task force that we'll talk about in our first meeting together.
Trustee Cross.
Yeah, I bought tickets to the KU night at the K and told my kids, like, this is based on a code of conduct. Like, you have to be good
right
in order to qualify. I think this is a tremendous opportunity. In my lifetime, I remember both Presidents Reagan and Clinton always talking about how these situations, though we arrive here, I think, out of strife and difficulty, are an interesting opportunity.
Sure.
Perhaps for one person's legacy at this table. Just to say it, I enjoy being the guy saying things. So I thank you for your work on this, Sherry, and I thank everybody here for their input and work. I think that, in my observation, I think everyone here is seeking, in good faith, to do their best to understand what goes on,
right.
And I appreciate you.
Okay. Well, when I look at this criteria, and then I remember the two students, Shelley and Jemima, that spoke at the session yesterday. This is why we have criteria like this, to ensure that folks like those two who have followed their dream and are becoming something different than they thought they could be, and they have great futures ahead of them. So, Sherry, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Sherry. And lastly, Dr. Harvey, I'd like to thank you and your leadership team for the statement you made earlier tonight. And also, I'd like to thank you for actually sharing your thoughts with me directly. It was very much appreciated. Look forward to more exchanges like that in the future, so thank you. And that closes the report.
Old business, I think we have none. New business, we have none.
I just have a question or a comment. I think it's great that Beth was awarded that invitation, and I hope that we work hard to make her feel respected by giving her a voice in the process.
Okay, good, thank you. Consent agenda is the next item on the agenda. It's a time we deal with a number of routine items. Unless a board member has an item to pull off the consent agenda, I would ask for a motion.
Could I pull this first and second grant?
What item is that? A3? A3?
The first and second grant from both are U.S. Department of Education grants. I just wanted to pull those if I may.
So is that A3?
You say that and I don't know what you're talking about.
Page 56, 1 and 2, I think.
Oh, yes.
Okay,
Yes,
we'll
sir.
pull A3 from the consent agenda. Any other items to be pulled from the consent agenda? I will entertain a,
HR addendum.
which number?
Which number was it?
C.
B what?
C.
C, you want to pull C?
C, yeah.
Okay, we're pulling C from the agenda, and we're pulling A3 from the agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'd move to report it with those exceptions.
Hey, do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item A3, Trustee Cross.
Yes, I was looking at the grants. I have no objection. Just wanted to ask for more information regarding the Adult Education Workforce and Opportunity Grant, ACT grant, and then number 2, the Carl Perkins Program. Just a brief synopsis of what we're doing there. Could I ask for that?
So the question is?
Take one and I'll take the second one.
What are they? And they seem exciting, and I just wanted to highlight them, frankly.
Karen, go first.
The first one is the AOK program. You've probably heard us talk about before, where we have the joint, we have adult education students in the credit classes together. They're co-led, and we have coaches that work with them as well, too. And they learn a job skill along with getting their GED at the same time.
So is this for, who is it for, may I ask? Is it for any specific person or demographic, or is it just?
Anyone that would be working on their GEDs.
I say I come out of a trailer park, it's hard to learn to talk. That was probably one of the most difficult things. So I didn't know if it was it's for all of our students?
Yes.
It's not simply for maybe people who have ESL?
No.
Okay.
And we started with the specific tracks like the CNA. Now we've gotten into railroad. We've done some in IT, welding, CTE programs. So they've broadened that scope of different career paths they can take.
So, and I'm parenting this back if I may, just to give our students basic English language competency so that they could survive in a workplace. Is that fair?
Well, they could be taking ESL proficiency, but they're also taking their GED along
Very
with,
good.
and getting the credit at the same time.
And then number 2 for me.
Yeah, the second one is the Carl Perkins grant. Carl Perkins was reauthorized through the federal government last spring, and so we've again begun to pick up funds for that. Carl Perkins actually focuses on career and technical education. It allows us to garner extra funds through that grant, which we use for extended training for our faculty, new equipment in newer and more progressive technical fields, as well as being able to pay for some exploratories for new programs that touch anything within the career and technical field, such as what we're kind of working on right now and bringing career and technical students from the high school ranks who are just now, they've completed all of the work that they can at the high school, and so we're trying to bring them in a year early to let them start down the path towards the AA degree in their technical field, since there is no more skill set training that they can get at the high school. Some of that is being supported by Carl Perkins dollars.
Yes, sir.
And so we use that in a variety of ways every year. It gets reauthorized every 2 years, which changes some of the reporting parameters, but the funding has been there and been consistent for about the last 20 years.
And just, I appreciate all that, and I wanted to highlight it as a way of saying that we're not just a feeder school for KU.
Yep.
It's a part of our broad mission here. I'm a KU graduate, but I'm sensitive to that, and I'm very proud of our mission. Like, we send kids to K-State too, but we have this broad fundamental mission that we do here, and all of our stakeholders should be thanked for the support they have.
Trustee Cross moves item A3. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item C, Trustee Lawson.
Okay.
Trustee Ingram informs me she also went to K-State.
Yeah. You're out of order.
I just had a question about the retirements. So our president, Dr. Sobchak, is noted as retirement. Is that the official filing, or is it resignation?
It's retirement.
The official filing is retirement? Okay. Was there a letter updating the information that we received?
Typically, when someone's retiring, they send in a resignation, but if they qualify for retirement and they qualify for the college retirement or the Baker's retirement, they're considered a retiree instead of just a resignation.
Trustee Lawson moves item C. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have no executive session. I would move for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.